Today, very important events took place on the front of the Ukrainian-Russian war. The Ukrainian military managed to seize the initiative from the enemy and recapture the aggregate plant in Vovchansk, which had been under the control of the Russian military for over 4 months. In early May, the Russians launched their offensive in the Kharkiv region. In June, during a month of heavy fighting, the occupiers managed to gain a foothold in certain areas of Vovchansk and break through to the territory of the Vovchansk Aggregate Plant. Soon after, the Ukrainian Defense Forces managed to stabilize the situation and establish control over the plant's perimeter, effectively putting it under siege. A part of the Russian group remained blocked on the territory of the plant. On September 24th, the commander of a special unit of the Main Intelligence Directorate, Timur, whose call sign was Linux, reported to the head of Ukrainian intelligence, Kyrylo Budanov, that the Vovchansk Aggregate Plant had been liberated. The unique operation, which lasted more than a week, was conducted by scouts from Timur's Special Forces unit, fighters from the Stugna, Paragon, Junger, RDC, Terror, and BDK units. The liberation of the plant narrows the enemy's control zone, the Defense Forces explain. This improves Ukrainian logistics and facilitates the implementation of the next tasks. Now it is possible to create a bridgehead for the development of the offensive and the final liberation of Vovchansk. Over the 4 months of the blockade, Russians have repeatedly tried to break through to the plant, but most of those who tried to do so were killed. All this time, the Russian command deceitfully kept its soldiers at the plant, promising them rotation, a breakthrough of the blockade, and support. There were frequent cases of desertion among the occupiers, and there were attempts to escape, which were also unsuccessful. All the logistics of the occupiers were actually carried out by delivering parcels with water, food, and combat gear by drones. This led to total hunger and thirst. From the testimonies of captured Russians, the Ukrainian military managed to learn the details of their existence at the plant. Quite gruesome details. Commanders of the blocked Russians from the Russian Special Forces kept discipline with total fear, violence, and murder. 2 Russian soldiers were killed by their commanders a few days before the Ukrainian complete liberation of the plant because they thought they drank more water from a bottle than they were allowed to. Several wounded Russians shot themselves because they had not received medical care for a long time and their condition was deteriorating. The hunger at the plant reached such a level that the Russians killed and ate several dogs that were wandering around. According to the prisoners, they had ideas to eat the livers of the killed Russian soldiers. It is suspected that they did so as the bodies of the dead Russians, seen by Ukrainian fighters, contained severed pieces of meat and various organs. The Ukrainian Defense Forces also emphasized the difficulty of capturing this facility. The problem was the limited use of artillery, the proximity of the buildings, and the presence of Ukrainian military and enemy forces did not allow for the full use of artillery due to the risk of friendly fire. However, this did not stop the Russians, and they fired at both the Ukrainian military and their own. In addition, due to complicated logistics and the fact that the Volcha River cut them off, it was impossible to use armored vehicles. The lion's share of the burden fell on the shoulders of our infantry units, who were the ones who were pulling explosives and dismantling the buildings where the enemy were located. At the time of the Russian capture of the aggregate plant, there were about 80 of them. Most of them were eliminated. At the final stage, the Ukrainian defenders managed to capture about 24 prisoners who finally realized the pointlessness of further resistance and surrendered. In particular, they reported that the Special Forces of the Main Directorate of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation, who commanded them, were either killed or some tried to withdraw, leaving their subordinates to die at the plant. In addition, according to the prisoners, they were outraged that the commanders kept most of the food and water that was delivered to them via drone drops. The prisoners also said that during their stay at the plant, the occupiers were able to dig a well in one of the basements to obtain groundwater. This allowed them to stay surrounded all this time, as the drone deliveries could not cover all their needs. The liberation of the aggregate plant significantly improves the tactical situation in Vovchansk. The Ukrainian Defense Forces destroyed the enemy's plans to push the defenders beyond the Vovcha River and greatly demoralized the occupiers' personnel in this area. A large number of cases of refusals to obey orders of their commanders are being recorded, as well as executions for these refusals among Russian troops. Soldiers of the armed forces of Ukraine surrounded an assault squad of Russian invaders in the partially occupied town of Chasiv Yar, Bakhmut district, Donetsk region, Kramatorsk direction. The occupants of one of the Russian brigades found themselves in a sharply weakened state when their neighbors from the 98th Airborne Brigade retreated, and the Ukrainian Defense Forces took advantage of this. Being surrounded, the occupiers suffer heavy losses, and their commander tells another commander in the audio clip that he does not know what to do in such a situation. The situation is difficult in other areas. The Ukrainian Defense Forces are repelling enemy attacks, trying to seize the initiative and launch a counteroffensive. In total, the losses of the Russian invaders amounted to 1,470 people over the last day. Ukrainian soldiers also neutralized 14 tanks, 42 armored combat vehicles, 55 artillery systems, 4 multiple launch rocket systems, 62 operational and tactical UAVs, 2 cruise missiles, and 99 units of occupants' special equipment. Thank you, friends. That's all for today. Subscribe to the channel to keep up with the latest developments. This video was prepared by Hustler. See you soon.